outstanding race at Oaklawn Park. They're moving into line for the Smarty Jones. Let's see, Mr. Z. Yep, he was getting wound up. You heard that. And it's such an advantage to have someone on site watching all this for us.
Okay,
like
but don't be alarmed. Okay, he's getting warm, yes, but don't be alarmed with this behavior behind the gate. He's done this a lot. I was at Saratoga for the Saratoga Special, and he did exactly the same thing behind the starting gate. But he is very, very wet.
Yeah, it looked like he went to Soapy Joe's before being moved into line here, because you can see that lather under the saddle
Didn't
towel.
get the rinse, did he?
Nope. The 5 Hebronville about to move into line. As I said, front bandages, that's not something at least noted in the past performances that he's had before. So a lot of question marks with some legitimate contenders in here. Maybe it opens up for a shocking upset in this race. Lucky Player has finished ahead of Mr. Z before when they met in the Iroquois, when Mr. Z was the favorite. Maybe he could shock this field at 14-1. It's the road to the Kentucky Derby. In one of those races, the Smarty Jones with 10 points going to the winner to get in the starting gate in the first Saturday in May. It's post time. Here's Frank Miramati with the call.
And they're off in the Smarty Jones. An American Sailor darts right out to the front. Mr. Z has some early speed. Bayerd moves up third. Lucky Player fourth. Runaway Bling rushes up on the outside. Private Prospect is sixth through the opening furlong. Paid Admission, Hebronville, far right will have to pass them all. 8 lengths covers the field around the first turn. American Sailor is the leader by a half length, with Mr. Z up alongside second. Runaway Bling third. Bayerd just inside of him fourth. Then comes Lucky Player fifth, about 6 lengths off the pace. Private Prospect is next. 3 clear of Paid Admission, Hebronville, and far right inches up inside of him. American Sailor and Mr. Z 1-2 down the backstretch, with Runaway Bling a length and a half back third. Bayerd has to get a little bit closer in fourth. Lucky Player on the fence fifth, with Private Prospect just outside of him. That pair 5 off the lead with 3 furlongs to run. Far right, Paid Admission, Hebronville at the back. American Sailor has been there every step of the way, shaded by Mr. Z. These two starting to separate. Bayerd clearly into third. Runaway Bling losing ground around the far turn. Private Prospect moves up to be clearly fourth. Far right moving up in traffic, top of the stretch, and Mr. Z makes his move, gets a reminder from Jon Court. American Sailor back to second. 4 back to Bayerd third. Mr. Z, very erratic, but he's in control. He's in front by 4 lengths. Far right is coming with a nice rally on the inside. He's storming home. Mr. Z is in the middle of nowhere as far right comes to get the lead and the win in the Smarty Jones. Bayerd gets second. Mr. Z erratic in a photo with Private Prospect for third. Far right storms to victory.
So much going on here in the Smarty Jones. A lot of people will immediately focus on what happened to Mr. Z turning for home. Remember when we looked back at that replay of the Los Alamitos Futurity, Simon Bray pointed out his biggest problem, even though he's on the inside that day, he spent a lot of time getting out. But who could have predicted, with no one to his outside today, he would get outside this much? Then there is the trip of your eventual winner, the one far right. Mike Smith moving up smartly into the far turn, but then had to stop and essentially re-rally here. This was a miracle trip for far right. As much as you can look back and say, what's going on with Mr. Z, the fact that Mike Smith does it again, finds a way out of trouble, and eventually a winning trip is remarkable with far right. Let's go to Simon Bray to take us through all that was going on here.
Yeah, tremendous race. And you got to remember, Mike Smith was aboard Mr. Z in that backtrack. So here's the advantage of knowing the idiosyncrasies of Mr. Z. And that's why I pointed out, he was drifting out in that stretch run in Los Alamitos Futurity last time out. And he only stayed straight because Dortmund and Fireline to his outside. Different kettle of fish here today. Okay, let's pick it up down the backside. Mike Smith on far right. He's already about, what would you say, 8 to 9 lengths from Mr. Z, and the pace setters here. At this juncture, he's got to navigate a trip around all these horses. Prior to this, I mean, he was far back in the early stages, a lot further back than I thought. So let's go ahead and roll the tape and see the dream trip that Mike gets, all the while knowing, he probably can't see Mr. Z here, but all the while knowing that Mr. Z, if he acted like he did last time, is going to get out. He's steadied right there. You see Mike steadied right there. He's on the rail, and you can, let's zoom in on him right here. Here he is, the one horse here, just looking for room. And here he comes through here. Now he's trying to find room. Mr. Z up on the front end, and you can see the head starting to twist. Okay, freeze it here. This is where things are going to go wrong for Mr. Z, and they're going to go right for Mike Smith. Mr. Z right here. Mike Smith down on the inside, going to get the absolute opposite trip to Mr. Z. Mike is going to come through horses this way, and Mr. Z is going to stay on the outside and end up in the middle of the track out here somewhere. Do you remember in the Los Alamitos Futurity, Mr. Z was in this position, had a horse on the outside of him to herd him and keep him straight. Let's go ahead and roll the tape. And Mike absolutely going to stay glued to the rail here. You can see him coming up the round. Now look at Mr. Z, head cocked. He'd been getting out down the backside, no fault of Jon Court. While he's going sideways, Mike is saving up all the ground there, and a perfectly timed ride. All he had to do, Mike, was stay out of the way of Mr. Z. I mean, if you've ridden that horse before, the one move you want to make on far right is come up the inside of Mr. Z, because if you come up the inside, you know 9 times out of 10, he's going to probably bolt to the outside. That's exactly what happened.
Simon, as you mentioned, not a whole lot Jon Court could do, and he had been aboard Mr. Z once before in the Breeders Futurity when they were second, but Mike Smith had been aboard him last time out, as you pointed out, where they had horses to their outside, so he really couldn't get out under those circumstances. But it did seem like the situation was exacerbated once Jon Court hit Mr. Z left-handed. Then all of a sudden, this horse just was very uncooperative.
Exactly. When he went to the left-handed whip, he ducked out. And look, I've watched this horse, like I said, I saw him in the Saratoga Special, I watched him in the Breeders Futurity. This has been getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't know what they're going to do to rectify it, maybe back off a little bit, but he won't win big races running like that, unfortunately.
Mike Smith rolling the dice along the pine, and it pays off in the Smarty Jones with far right. We'll be back after this.